Welcome in, everybody. It's time for the winning drive here at On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, stepping in for Rod Babers, who's out on another assignment today. Bob Shipley, Coach Bob Shipley, and CJ Vogel alongside. I hope you guys enjoy your time with us this afternoon. Got some news coming in. People are talking about Trey Moore. Little news coming, not necessarily from the transfer portal of late, CJ, which we've been monitoring, but actually about guys that are going to stay Longhorns. Yesterday, we got news that DJ Campbell would return, and today we find out that Trey Moore is going to return, the defensive lineman and edge prospect, originally from UTSA via Smithson Valley. He will return to the Longhorns for the 2025 season. What do you make of what the Longhorns have done this offseason so far as it relates to the transfer portal and or the NFL draft? Because now this is three guys coming back, all with starting experience.
Well, they did exactly what they needed to do, right? Texas, and we'll talk about it. It's a new era of college football where, yes, the portal can help you, but the portal can also hurt you, right? And so Texas, and dealing with NIL and dealing with what all goes into that, you got to basically re-recruit your whole roster once again at the conclusion of a season. And I thought Texas, to your point, Bobby, did a really fine job of retaining the guys that they had hopes for 2024. They saw them go through and then said, okay, we also need you to be a big piece of 2025. You're a big piece of the puzzle. And they retained a lot of pieces that are really going to help this team carry over what had been two really successful seasons back to back. Keeping that continuity, that nucleus the same year in and year out, that helps you pretty tremendously in terms of building back up.
Hey, Bob, and I did say this early. Texas, I said this and I wrote this on Twitter, actually. Everybody involved with the Texas personnel retention, whether it's Sark to Brandon Harris, John Michael Jones, Chris Gilbert, all the way down to assistant coaches, etc. They all deserve a pat on the back, as well as numerous donors and the One Fund, all those people that made player retention at Texas so successful. You actually were in the personnel department at Texas at one point in time. Give folks, and I don't know that you were there during the portal day and age, like the true portal day and age, but give folks an understanding of all the people involved in this kind of undertaking from a Texas standpoint.
Yeah, well, you're right. I retired as the portal was kind of, we knew it was coming.
Yep.
So basically I was there Sark's first spring. But I tell you, one of the names that I don't ever hear that I think deserves a huge thank you is Kevin Washington, Director of Player Development. He is a rock star stud in what he does. So he came. Originally he was out of Houston, signed with Notre Dame, transferred to Abilene Christian and played as a grad transfer, and then was head of the FCA for Abilene Christian, Hardin Simmons, and McMurray, and then got hired in Houston. And I think he took care of the men's programs. I think his wife took care of the women's programs. And it was he was so successful and made such an impact. Tom Herman said, I need this guy on my staff full time, not FCA. I need him on my staff just because of the impact he made on his football players. And so when Tom Herman came to Texas, he brought Washington with him as director of player development, which for those of you that don't know, he's kind of like the team chaplain, kind of like the big brother, the counselor, I mean, there were players in his office all the time. And I've known Kevin for a long time, and I know why. They're in there seeking advice, seeking counsel, wisdom, the way that he works with guys. He set a great foundation, I think, for the culture that Sark was able to bring in. It matched with him perfectly. And so he has taken a job as the assistant athletic director at Baylor. and in charge of spiritual. I'm not really sure exactly what a position that University of Texas doesn't have, obviously, because we're not a private Christian school. But it fits him perfectly, and I'm sure he and his wife had long time of weren't able to have kids. They finally were blessed with a little girl, and I'm just so proud of him and the job that he's done. He's one guy you'll never hear anybody say anything negative about him. Let me give you one more example. I hate to dominate this, but players would come in and say, "Man, you're not my coach said this to me today," or maybe he cussed at me today and said this word, and Kevin would say, "Dang, that didn't feel good, did it?" "No, it didn't." "Well, so you're pissed?" "Yeah, I'm pissed." "Well," Kevin said, "I'm pissed too. I'd be pissed too." Okay, so here's a scenario. What are we going to do about it? And so Kevin tries to explain to the players, it's a sense of urgency coming from the players, coaches. It's not personal. It's just a sense of urgency to try to get you to play or practice at the highest level he can probably get you to practice and play at. And so he would just explain it in a way where it wasn't personal, that it's just in almost any college staff you go to are going to try to motivate you out of the pressure that they're feeling, the heat that's being put on them. And so he was just such a great, just kept everything, I think, in the correct viewpoint or thought process or whatever. And I know a lot of those guys are going to hate to see him go, but he's the one that probably had the closest relationship outside the specific coaching staff, and maybe even a better relationship than the coaches had with their own group, because he's non-threatening. He's just the wise one that they would all go to. And the rule is, at least it was when I was there with Herman, was he doesn't tell Herman anything unless Herman thinks that this player could potentially hurt himself, or something like that. So it all stays between them and they work it out. And I think that's a huge reason that the culture is, coupled with what Sark has brought, has been so strong.
That's good. That's great stuff. Good insight, Coach. I appreciate that very much. All right, we're going to take y'all's questions and get into some straight on over tackle reporting here, if you don't mind. Let's start with some of these questions that are being asked about portal entrance. I can say that Manny Muhammad has not entered the portal, so that means he's staying at this point. DeAndre Moore has not entered the portal. He's staying. There are a number of others that are that way. I will say that there is one guy out there that has entered the portal that I can't divulge at this point. We'll see where that ends up here in the next 24 hours or so. And I'm not going to give you any hints or anything more than that, but I can definitely knock some guys off the list, I guess is the best way to put it, more than sitting here and telling you who is on it and is not. I'll just be frank about that. All right, before we get further into the portal with CJ and Coach Shipley and talking a little bit of Longhorn football and whatnot, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Flat Creek Estate Winery. The guys out there, both Neil, Sean, as well as Eva, Eddie Lopez as well. All those guys, good guys. If you've been out there, it's a beautiful venue. It also is the closest and most awarded wine in Texas to downtown Austin. That's right. Flat Creek Estate Winery is just minutes from town, and they've won award after award for their vintage wine, Super Texan. Super Texan is now available at your local Specs as well as HEB Central Market. Of course, Flat Creek is also a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. It's perfect for a day date with your significant other. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery. I got to say this. It's also perfect to propose to your fiance. That's what one of the On Texas Football members did. They went out to the winery there and proposed, thanks to Neil and the group at Flat Creek Estate Winery. All right, let's get into some questions and go straight to it and see what everybody has to say here and questions being asked. This one, first of all, BF, Texas really passed on Damon Wilson, edge from UGA, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. I don't know that Texas passed. It's just they had other priorities. I mean, you can't can't sit here and say they want everybody and then at the same time go re-sign Trey Moore, right? And get him back on your team and have Colin Simmons coming, have Colton Vosick coming back, Ethan Burke coming back, all those guys. It's just hard. You can't go out and get every single person. So that's one of those things that we have to worry about. Hey, CJ, people are asking about Freddie DeBose. We haven't talked about him much lately. Clint Barrows. Speaking of a Smithson Valley guy, what's been the news on Freddie DeBose? I know he wasn't expected to get playing time this year, but what does it look like in terms of his future? Where's he sit? I know Parker Livingstone's in that class, Aaron Butler, as well as obviously Ryan Wingo. Where's he stand?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, the big question for Freddie DeBose was how healthy will he be after his torn ACL, in which he kind of played on in his senior year at Smithson Valley, ended up making a run at the state championship, did not participate last year in the spring, and was redshirted this fall. He did not travel with the team for most of the games, as many of those redshirt young cats do not, so nothing out of the ordinary there. It's going to be really interesting to see where he kind of shakes out this year, right? Can he get to a point where he can fend off a Khalid Lockett, a Jamie French, right? Dalen McCutcheon all coming in, very talented guys. Texas hasn't seen a lot of them on the field because of injuries. It's all about, can he get back to that level that he was playing at before his knee injury in high school? And if he can do that, well, then we'll start talking about maybe being a rotational piece, maybe contributing in 2025. But we got to see it on the field first before making any type of true conclusion about his potential addition to the team in next year.
I've got a question for you on top of that. And Bob, I want you to chime in here. What do y'all think Texas needs right now from its receiving core, given that Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore returning, Parker Livingstone coming up the ranks right now, and they've got the three really good true freshmen? Is there a piece to this that requires an elder statesman in the room, Bob? What do you think of that?
Well, my initial thought was the first thing I think of when I think of needs. You need this every year, and we may have plenty, but you can't have too much speed.
Yeah,
speed. We need the game breakers. That's what we need. We need an X on our team. We need Xavier Worthy type guy. Who can break games wide open for you. You always need a couple of those guys. But I do agree that if you can get a great transfer guy like Matthew Golden, then you've got both. You've got a great athlete and you have speed. But that's the one thing I think. Along with, I just want to make sure that they continue to recruit the type of players that they've been recruiting, that are selfless, that are team players, that understand that there's competition, that I have to earn this. Nothing's going to be given to me. We don't need bad attitudes. We don't need locker room cancers. We've got a very unique situation right now because peer pressure in that locker room is a positive thing. And I promise you, I've been in that program before where the peer pressure in the locker room was negative. And if you were a positive, you were an outcast, And so there's a great culture going on right now where if you're not a team guy, if you're not a positive influence, then you stand out like a sore thumb. And that's what we need to continue to work on, I think, outside of the skill level that we're trying to build up.
I think that's very well said, Coach. Just making sure that the additions, the freshmen, whoever's coming into this locker room is seeing what's happening and how the way things are done and kind of just joining the fold of that, right? Don't go against the grain in the sense that, you don't like it the way that it's done, but do it because it's the way that it, kind of constructs this locker room. I think that's well said. In regards to what Texas needs, to your point, I think a veteran speedster, a guy who's played snaps, made big catches, right? One of the big things for Isaiah Bond last year was just that. He had the 4th and 31 catch in the Iron Bowl that says, okay, he can build up, he can live to just about any moment because he's done it before. Of course, the 4.3 speed certainly helps now. what Texas will need to do this year. Should they go grab a portal guy? And I don't think that there's anybody in the portal right now, and that's including the 2 Penn State guys that entered this past Wednesday night, Tuesday afternoon. I don't think Texas will go the routes of them, even though, Amari Evans from Killeen, Harrison Wallace, a guy, big playability, a lot of experience. I don't think that the guy that they're looking for right now is in the portal, so we'll see in the spring, maybe. And, Coach, I'm with you. I think you take a guy every year at wide receiver, just in the sense that you don't want to have a down year ever. But maybe after the spring, you say, all right, needs change a little bit because of the guys that we already have on campus. Let's not forget those 2 kids coming in, 3 kids coming in, really talented. Parker Livingston, really talented. They like him a lot behind the scenes. And what can Aaron Butler do? That's I think a forgotten piece in all of this.
Yeah.
Well, look, Texas got the good thing about it, there is another portal period in April where Texas has a chance to go out and add a potential receiver if they need one, right? That's the whole piece. What if, I don't know, Jamie French comes in and just lights the world on fire, and all of a sudden he's looking like, I'm not saying he's going to be Ryan Wingo, but somewhat similar, or somebody like an Xavier Worthy that's accelerated time-wise, right, and ready to go sooner than maybe you anticipate. By waiting until the spring, you get a little bit better gauge of that. Now, conversely, on the downside, you may not have as good of players go into the portal after spring ball. So there's a little give and take there. But the one thing I would say, look, we have to give some reason of doubt, or some benefit of the doubt, to Steve Sarkisian and what he's done. I mean, I am the first person to tell you that I was concerned about defensive tackle and recruiting. I'll be the first person to tell you that I didn't know what they were going to do at certain times, at certain positions, and voila, they do something. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's not like he's asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
Right. You don't get that sense. So he understands the team better than anybody. And so if he thinks he needs to go get someone in this spring at wide receiver, I think he's going to do it. Just depends on who and what and how. Jay Soa has a super chat. Any chance Tashard Choice takes the Cowboys running back job? They got to find a head coach first, right? They didn't do that today, and I didn't hear about it, right?
No, nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Deion's trying. Is Deion going to get that job? Is that what we think right now? Is that really?
Well, you've also got a former Cowboy who's a private school high school coach in the Metroplex, who a lot of people are talking about, and that would be about as Jerry Jones a move as I can.
Is that Jason Witten? Is that Witten?
Yes. Now, trust me. I love high school football. I love Jason Witten. I hear he's doing an amazing job. It's a little bit different. Even jumping to college.
That's a huge jump.
But yeah, I understand he's played. He knows York. But come on, man. It's time for the Cowboys to be back up and some people to swallow their pride and hire the best coach and let him do the job. That's my fear, is that Jerry will get a guy like him who feels like he's lucky to get the job so that he can still have full control of everything.
Jerry's the GM, baby. He's the GM. The buck stops with him.
That's right.
It's what you're worth $1 billion. You can buy that kind of street cred at least. Ski Breck, which players are still outstanding? DeAndre Moore. Anyone else still yet to release a decision? DeAndre Moore is expected to return. There is at least one decision that we believe has entered the portal. Pretty sure that it's happened. We cannot name names at this time, but Ski Break, it's not Moore. It's not Manny Muhammad. We've mentioned some other guys. We can't, for example, I haven't heard about Amari Niblack right now. Joseph Johnson's asking. So rather than go down a list of guys and name each and every one of them, it's hard to do that. All right, we got others, and here's one that we can answer, guys. Do NIL payments happen only in the fall? No, they don't. Actually, Derek, what they do is they are paid when the player actually does what he's required to do by the contract. So if that's to, for example, go out and visit with mobile loaves and fishes and do a benefit for them, they're paid as they do those things. It's not any kind of backwards thing. It's just like work. You're paid when you do it, basically. So that's kind of how it goes. All right, CJ and Bob, want to ask you guys this one. Rillo Hookham, with Arch's mobility, do you see a guy like Nato getting a better shot since he's a road grader and pass protection is his weaker area? This is something CJ and Rod and I discussed a little bit last night, Bob. I'd love your feedback. With Arch, are you going hard play action with downhill run and throwing over the top? So you need a little bit like Hayden Connor wasn't a hard play action guy, right? I mean, he was that a different type. Is that what you may be looking at differently from an offensive line requirement with Arch at QB?
I do, but I was an offensive line coach for several years, 5 years in the college level, and here's one thing that hurt us, and it hurts a lot of programs. You're recruiting players as offensive linemen who are taught to retreat from the 7th grade when the ball snapped because everybody's throwing it. So they're taught to retreat. All right. And then you throw in our outside zone, and still it doesn't require a lineman to come off low and hard. It requires him to come up and look second level, because me and the guy inside of me have the defensive lineman and the linebacker. So we're both watching them and we're running with them to the sidelines. And so we don't really, we haven't really bought into a come off the ball with your back flat and just motor grade anything in your way. We've lost that somehow. And so if I'm recruiting offensive linemen, I want to see guys that know how to come off the ball low and hard and move people out of the way so we can hopefully make a little more yardage and short yardage and in red zone situation. But it's harder to find linemen like that because everybody's retreating when the ball snapped now. They're not taught like they used to be to come off the ball and knock you back, unless you're up in the Midwest and you're, Ohio State and some of these Penn State and some of these teams that do more of that. They're recruiting better type linemen to do that. That's what I would wish. And more of a gap scheme, more of a power scheme, so that you can do that and we can get good fakes up the middle from Arch. I do think the outside zone is a nice bootleg action off of. So I know we're not going to let that go, but I would personally like to see us really focus this spring on coming off the ball with the flat back and driving people, because that's the one thing that we were not able to do offensively this year.
Do you think that guys like Nato might fit that style more?
Yeah, I do.
I think DJ Campbell fits that style better.
Yes.
Cole Hudson. I mean, that was a triple option kid in high school, right. So that's all he knew, coach. Kind of on the contrary, is he didn't have a lot of pass sets. And I think that's kind of where he gets or at least runs into a little bit of issues, is more so in pass protection. He hasn't been great. I think more so because of hey, you got this series and you got series number 4. Right. It's hard to find a rhythm as an offensive lineman, much like a quarterback, if you're continually in and then out and then out and then in and whatever. But I think that power run might suit the interior, what's projected to be the interior of Nato, Cole Hudson, and DJ a little bit more because of the bodies that you got at guard, but also what Cole Hudson has done basically his entire year. And that's, to your point, coach, of flat back, move bodies out of the way.
Yeah, I used to get defensive line. We were working goal line. I'd call a couple extra guys in there. Let's have 13 coming. I wanted to make it as hard on them as I could, and still try to push some movement so that when they get in the game, it's like there's not near as many guys in here to block as there is in practice.
I love it. All right, hey, question for y'all, and this one's for both you guys. Not having a solid TE an issue for Sark? Last 2 years, Texas has been extraordinarily blessed. Previously with JT Sanders, now Gunnar Helm this year. Is Jordan Washington ready to step in that role? Is Amari Niblack coming back and going to be a guy? What about Spencer Shannon or any of the newcomers, Dick Townsend or Amari Winston? How important is it that Texas finds a piece to the puzzle with one of those guys? CJ, I'll let you go first.
I think it's huge. Sark on several times has said that tight ends is the second most important position in his offense. Obviously, we saw what kind of impact Gunnar Helm had in just really 1 year of extended play, but he had the third most snaps of anybody on the Texas roster. It's pretty telling, right? And that's more than your quarterback. I know that there are injuries amongst the way, but when you have that guy, it kind of solves a lot of issues for your offense. Now, does Texas have their guy? I think they have a lot of talented guys, specifically Jordan Washington. I think he will have a great career at Texas. Is he ready next year? That's something that we didn't get the luxury of seeing at all for the most part, right? We saw maybe 40, 50 snaps for him this year, but nothing that really put him into the fire and said, okay, go block that Arkansas edge. Go play on the road and hold your water against A&M, right? We didn't see that all that much. So it's an unknown for me. Again, I think that there are several bodies in that room that you could get bits and pieces out of, but who's going to emerge as the guy? That's the big question. And again, I think tight end's a tough spot to just become that guy if you haven't played a little bit, right? Would Gunnar Helm have had this kind of season if that was his first time touching the field? Maybe not. You know, he had a start against Oklahoma in a pretty impactful game. He started against Kansas after JT Sanders went down in 23. He's had that little bit of experience now. It's also tough for young guys because you got to talk about, are you strong enough? Or are you willing to move 300-pounders? Can you chip? Can you wham block across the backside? That's all what's asked of in this offense. And to me, it's an unknown. But I think the bodies are there. You can find it. You just got to prove it in the spring.
Well, is that versatility, Bob, why Sark likes tight ends so much and calls them such an important position to his offense?
Yes, absolutely. I tend to think that our staff, who, as you mentioned, Bobby, they deserve our trust. You know, you look at all the things that had to be fixed. You know, we lost 2 defensive linemen to the NFL. Our secondary was horrible, you know, in the conference championship game, not necessarily conference championship game, but in the playoff game and spring game, you know, I mean, it's just, but I remember distinctly this time last year calling Gunnar Helms just a guy. He's just a guy. I mean, you know, man, I've made that confession many times this season. Was I wrong? I would like to think that our staff sees somebody else, whether that's Jordan or whoever the other guy is, that is going to come along like Gunnar did. Otherwise, I think we'd be hearing more tight end talk in the portal, you know, if they didn't think they had a guy there. So I tend to think they do have a guy there. I don't know who it's going to be, but as important as it is to Sark, I think they've got to feel good about the guys they have on campus, or we'd be hearing more talk about the portal.
Yeah, Texas did bring in a tight end in the portal, but they thought he was more of a big wide receiver, is what I'm told, as opposed to a true tight end. Right? The young man ended up going to Ohio State, so he's not a bad player, right? I mean, it's just a difference of what they maybe need and are looking for right now at tight end. All right, this one from Jay Lee. Thanks for the super chat, Jay Lee. Any chance Michael Terry ends up at running back? I assumed him working with the wide receivers was so he didn't scare Blue off. I don't think that would have been the case anyways, Jay Lee. But now that's not an issue. That isn't an issue. Do you think ultimately that he's a wide receiver or running back? What, CJ, you went down and saw Michael Terry in person, 4 or 5 times this past calendar year?
Yeah.
What do you think ultimately he is at Texas?
I think he's a wide receiver. Look, the vision, the cuts, that's all great from a running back. But again, competition, San Antonio, not what you're going to see in the SEC. I also think the frame and the speed that he can create in space is going to help him more so at wide receiver than running back. You know, he's fast. I wouldn't necessarily call him super quick, but in the routes, you know, he can find separation. Inside the tackles, I think the success that he had in high school may not translate all the way over. But regardless, I think, Bobby, he's more like if you put it on a pendulum of running back to wide receiver to tight end, I think he's more in this area between wide receiver and tight end, where Texas probably won't throw him at tight end right away, make him, earn his keeps at wide receiver, but he has a body that can balloon up to about 230, 235 if he puts in that time in the weight room and nutrition, et cetera. But the speed aspect to the size that he could build is what's going to separate him. And I think that's a little bit separate than just being a pound and ground running back.
230-pound wide receiver. David Boston, anybody remember him, Coach?
Who's that?
David Boston. You remember him?
No.
Big old wide receiver out of Humble. He ended up going, I think he went to Notre Dame and then played for years in the NFL. Huge kid. I would ask you this, CJ. What do you think of his physicality? Because that was I mentioned this to Jerry the other day. I think I didn't see enough of Michael Terry's physicality to know what if he was a physical enough guy, not just to play running back, but also a tight end type situation. Is he got that kind of physicality, or did you not see it enough?
Look, that's one of the more unknowns, I think, and that'll build with his frame, I guess. But look, he was used as a quarterback, a wildcat quarterback often. He was out wide at wide receiver. And if he wasn't getting the ball, he was a decoy because everybody else on the defensive side of the ball thought that he would be getting the ball, right? So not often was he a lead blocker. Not often was he a crackback blocker. So that's going to be a learning curve as well. But I think that more than anything, Michael Terry's a heck of a coach or a heck of a program guy. I talked to him, talked to Coach Rittiman down at Alamo Heights. This is a guy that's first in the weight room, first out of the weight room, first in the locker room, last out of the locker room. And that's all because what can I do to win? What can I do to help my team? If there's a new role, he's going to dive into it head on. And that's one of the things that above the talent on the field, I took note of him when going down to San Antonio to see him is, he finished every speech that he ever gave. And that's for All-American jersey recipient, his commitment. I talked to him even after his regular season, career game, basically. He finished every single sentence, every single speech with, "It's a great day to be a mule." Now, if you get that kind of, headspace for your program, you're in a good spot. And that's a kid that's going to do whatever it takes to get on the field and help his program.
All right. Thank you, Jay Lee, for the super chat. We're going to get to your next one in 1 second. I want to go to this one first from Josie. Any info on when the spring game is? Wanting to bring my family down from South Dakota. I think it's going to be mid-April. I don't believe they've decided on a date, or at least they haven't published it yet. But it's typically late April, mid to late April. And I would imagine that that's going to be the time frame again, because the NCAA transfer portal opens yet again. What is it? April 26th for a 10-day window, CJ?
Yep.
So I'm sure they're going to want to have the game before that, if at all. Bob, here's one from Daniel Clark for you. Coach, with a mobile QB like Arch, do you fear we lose our running game like we did 20 years ago? So in other words, when Vince was the guy, all of a sudden it was zone read, right? They kind of relied on that. The real run game kind of went out. Same with and that carried through to Colt McCoy. What do you think of that with Daniel Clark? Because I would question that is what I would guess. What do you think?
I don't think that is going to be an issue because Arch is great. Arch is a very mobile quarterback, very athletic. He's already proven that. He's not Vince Young, nor will they use him like Vince Young. He's too valuable. They will use him from time to time, of course, and he'll make plays, whether it's called or whether it's just him tucking the ball and running. But I think it will actually help our running game, the way that they'll utilize him, because he is not RB1, like Vince was. Vince was the guy, and everybody knew Vince was the guy. But I think they'll use Arch in a way occasionally where you have to honor him. For an example, when you're in empty, there wasn't much of a threat with Quinn. There's a big threat with Arch, and that's how I see us using him. I think it will help our running backs because they know that even though Arch may bootleg or roll out or whatever after he hands it off, you got to make sure he doesn't have it.
All right, we got another super chat coming from Jay Lee we're going to get to. But first, I want to say thank you to one of our core sponsors here at On Texas Football. Texas football fans, score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has more than 600 vehicles in stock, and their award-winning sales staff doesn't do games or gimmicks. They just get straight to the point by getting you the best deal possible. Score big today at South Point Dodge. Come see us off I-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything. If you're looking to sell your car, get South Point's best offer over the phone or online. Again, that's southpointdodge.com off I-35 in South Austin. Make sure you check out those Ram trucks that they've got from Dodge. Top stuff there as well. We appreciate their sponsorship of On Texas Football. All right, question here again from Jay Lee that we can get to real quick, guys. We all love Michael Taft, but is it worth it if the cost is scaring a guy like Derek Williams off, who has multiple years left? I hear he might be off to the portal. We're not going to comment on off to the portal there on Derek Williams, but the question is, if you're scaring people off, they may not be the right guy anyways. And the one thing I would say that Sark and his staff have done, particularly on defense, they rotate the heck out of guys. I mean, CJ, you keep up with this stat and have done so really well about tracking the number of plays someone has. Is Texas one of the bigger teams or better teams that you've seen as far as rotating number of defensive players into a game?
Yeah, especially in the secondary. And we've talked about it, especially towards the back end when it was Jelani McDonald making a lot of headway in that rotation with Michael Taft and Andrew Makuba. But early on, it was Derek Williams, right? And it wasn't until his injury against Oklahoma where you really saw them have to dig deeper into that rotation of Jelani McDonald. You saw a little bit of Jordan Johnson-Rubel, and next year, who knows what Zealous Hicks looks like, who knows what Jonah Williams provides, and who knows what Xavier Filsami does as well. So that's going to be unique, but Texas has plenty of bodies at the safety room. And here's the other thing is, and it's not just Texas fans, but it's fans in general who want to look ahead to what could be, the promise of a certain player. Michael Taft was just a second-team All-American. Are you telling him to move on for the promise and the potential of another player? I sure as hell wouldn't. He just proved that he's amongst the top 5 best safeties in the entire country. And so that I look at it in the sense of, does a guy returning maybe delay the process of getting on the field for a guy behind him? Sure. That's just the case at every school, at every position when that happens. But at the end of the day, you've got a heck of a football player and one that's recovering who's already shown really tremendous promise for the sense that he was your best cover safety in the Sugar Bowl going against Washington. So I think you'll see that rotation at safety. I think you'll see a rotation at cornerback. Who knows if it bleeds into nickel at all with Jelani or Wardell Mack or whoever with Jalen Gilbo down there. But you got a plenty of bodies. It's all about trusting the coaches to make sure that they're utilized correctly and kept all the way through.
Got to wonder if Jalen Gilbo is going to move to corner, which is something that Emmanuel Villafranco is asking us who plays and rotates besides Manny and Taft. Jelani McDonald, you mentioned that one. You'd think Jalen Gilbo has a starting spot at nickel locked up, but he might get some time at corner just like Jahdae Barron did last year with a cross train. There's just a lot of nuances there, Emmanuel. And frankly, there's some guys that we haven't seen enough of yet that came in last year. And there's some guys that are here now that we haven't seen from this year. Are some of those guys ahead of others? I guess we'll find that out as we go forward. Bob, this one I think is a good one for you. Just want to point out, and this is from Clint Barrows. Thank you, Clint. That having this many players leave for the draft is a good program issue to have. Maybe not a good single season issue, but for a program, it means you are doing it right. Yes, the consistency, right, Bob, that you're turning them out every year.
Yeah, and Georgia's done it for years. So's Alabama, and so's Ohio State, and those blue bloods. Here's a crazy thing. You can go through our roster and you can count I can count 16 guys that I think have a good shot at being drafted. And if that's so, that's the all-time record.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever had 16 players drafted on one team in the modern day draft. And so that's proof that we're going to develop you. We're going to have you in great schemes. We're going to coach you well. We're going to care for you. And you're going to get in the NFL. We know that's your goal, and we want to help you get there. And so why wouldn't you want to go to a place where almost every starter they're losing is going into the NFL? You know, that's great recruiting to me.
You can talk about NIL all you want. That second contract in the NFL worth a lot more money.
Yeah. Which is why a guy like Trey Moore comes back. You know, if we didn't have NIL, I don't think we'd see Trey back. But he can still buy himself a little more time to develop, to stack up some stats and things like that, all while making good money at the university. So I think that certainly helped in retaining some of our guys.
No question. Jay Lee here. Smart doesn't get much great credit for being one in. I think he get much. I'm missing here for being 1-6 against Bama. Basically, he's only won one game against Bama because Smart has the national championships. He won 2. Does the Ryan Day Michigan stuff stop when they win Monday? I did Bob saying no, because Georgia and Alabama, as much as they're rivals, it's not Auburn, Alabama.
Right.
Ohio State, Michigan is a different category.
That's going to be the same thing every year. I mean, what have you done for me lately?
And you don't mind it, do you?
Nope.
You kind of think that's how it's supposed to be?
I love it. I love it.
Hey,
everybody needs a little humble pie once in a while, you know?
Yes.
Especially Ryan Day.
I mean, Coach, would you trade a national championship for 5 straight losses to A&M?
Absolutely.
What?
I'm saying no.
I went for 5 straight losses to A&M. I couldn't. I don't know if I could handle that.
You said to A&M.
Yes.
Yeah.
You lose 5 straight times to A&M, but you end up with a national championship
with one national championship. I think we win. I think we win more than 1 in 5 years. I hate to lose to A&M as much as everybody, but you know it's been a while since we won a national championship. Not as long as Notre Dame, Penn State, but it's been a while.
Yeah,
I would absolutely take that trade in a heartbeat. You won forever.
First of all, we wouldn't be
able to no. I'm a hard pass on the.
We wouldn't be able to recruit at the level that we need to recruit at to win national championships if we lose to A&M that many times in a row.
Now 10 is a little much. I'm not doing 10.
I just want y'all to remember, y'all didn't go through some of the 80s and 90s like I did.
I know.
Bob did. Bob remembers it. CJ, it wasn't pretty.
I can't stomach a loss to A&M if we only won 3 games in a year. I mean, it's just
but you get a natty in there.
It's not acceptable.
A national championship?
Well, you know what? The Aggies will just turn that around. Yeah, y'all won it. It proves we should have won it. We beat your ass 5 years in a row. You know, they don't need. They don't need.
Coach, that's fine because I know that they're not going to win a national championship. So you just got to go like that, right?
Well, if they beat us 5 times in a row with the kind of talent we have, they're going to be knocking on that door. I promise you.
Yeah, maybe.
Rilo says my dad tried to give me a maroon truck. I said, no, thanks.
I'm with you, Rilo.
Good stuff, man. Hey, I'm just thinking about some of the things. This is from, of course, Colton Rowe, who must be out of school by now. This is for CJ.
He is.
He's buying you another drink, CJ.
The Colt Fund is stacking up.
Yeah, absolutely. This one from RW. We're going to get a couple more questions here before we get going today. RW asks, Bobby, do you think Santana Wilson will surprise everyone in the spring and be corner number 3 or possibly give Kobe Black a run for his money? I think Santana Wilson will give people could be that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. I think Jalen Gilbo might push out the corner, and you might see Kobe Black be cornerback number 3.
Oh.
Don't be surprised with that. But we'll see. A lot of things have to come to pass. If that happens, then who goes to nickel? Obviously, Wardell Mack is there, but then you could theoretically, you could push Jelani McDonald down into a full-time starting role and still have 2 big-time safeties in Taff and Williams. So a lot of permutations, RW, that could it be Santana Wilson? Yeah, of course it could. But we'll see that a little bit more in this spring. Let me ask y'all this. Position you think needs to improve the most next year for Texas? Other than, I'm not going to take away punter and field goal kicker, okay? Because those weren't ideal this season. Position you think needs to improve the most or change the most?
Yeah.
Like I'll give you an example. Is it potentially running back? And I want to say this, it's not that Wisner wasn't really good or Blue wasn't good in what they did. It's just they didn't have the complete package there. If that they didn't have the full accoutrement of what they needed to run.
Yeah, I would say that's exactly right. I don't know, with CJ Baxter out, we had good running backs, but they weren't at the same level as our lineman, receiver, quarterback, DB. They just weren't quite on the same level. You know what I'm saying? It's CJ Baxter, I think, would have been on the same level as the rest of our team and positions. But in terms of position, I felt like, with the injuries, that was a big thing. Plus, when you're talking about change, I've already talked about that. I want to see us do more downhill power stuff, gap stuff. I just think there's so many different ways you can run the power and get the same result, but it's a different look. Whether it's the backside guard pulling and leading, whether it's an H-back coming up and leading, whatever it is. Back in the good old days when Emmitt Smith ran it for the Cowboys and made a career out of it, you had the backside guard plus a fullback or H-back leading up in there. And so I would like to see us do more downhill inside running with a back that's capable of doing that. I don't know that we have a back like that on the roster right now besides CJ Baxter.
Yeah. What about you, CJ Vogel? What do you think is the position that could improve the most or stand to improve the most year over year?
I kind of look at it differently because I think obviously the running game is a complete byproduct of the big bodies up front. I think guards need to be better. And look, I think Hayden Connor was really solid in pass protection. I thought he was really solid. The PFF numbers back that up as well. DJ Campbell, he kind of came into his own in pass protection. There's still some of those, pass offs that got him, right? The twist, the stunts, the games. Still got a few times. Run game for the 2 left guard, right guard spot, that has to be better. And you could probably lump center in as well. So really the interior 3 for an offensive line, that run game has to be much improved. The bodies need to be pushed back, right? We saw a few times, and this was happening in the Notre Dame game, the Penn State games leading up to the semifinal. They would have 5, 6, 7 yards up in front before their running back is contacted. If you can do that, you're going to be successful in the run game every single year. Now that's tough to do. But how often did you see, outside of maybe the 70-yard run from Jaden Blue against Clemson, how often did you see a Texas running back not contacted at the line of scrimmage or within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage? And Texas playing in the SEC, I know it's a different level of defensive lineman, but that's a big jump that I'd like to see Texas take. I put the note up on one of the miscellaneous stat threads earlier today from the 24 season. Do you know both Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner were top 5 in forced missed tackles this year for SEC running backs? I didn't know that, but the success that they had, I think, is more a result to Texas has good running backs. You got to make guys miss, but if you don't have to do that. You can just get a full head of steam and use that speed of Jaden Blue or whoever's in the stable behind them to get a full head and go ahead and beat guys to the edge. I think that's going to be a much bigger benefactor for you. So I look at the interior offensive line. They've got to be better, have to be better in run game specifically for me.
Well, here's the crazy thing. How were we able to do it against A&M? I don't understand that.
I don't either. How were you able to do it against Clemson either, but not Arizona State? It just is a coin flip. I couldn't understand it either, Coach.
I don't understand it.
I think
here's what I just say to catch all. It wasn't a good matchup. Throw it in that bag, but that doesn't really answer any questions.
All right, want to get to one more question, but before we do that, I want to say thank you to Duck Camp, Coach Shipley wearing their gear today. We appreciate them very much. Duck Camp has been a big sponsor of ours this year. It's an Austin-based company that really has some tremendous all-around gear. If you're a hunting or fishing guy, you want to check it out at duckcamp.com. We know there are those of you out there that look forward to the opening day of hunting season and the kickoff of Longhorn football with the fervor and excitement of a 5-year-old on Christmas morning. That's Duck Camp. So from opening day to game day, they've got you covered. They believe you can't just sit around and wait for adventure to come to you. You have to get out there, stay out there, and make the most of every second. Shop hunting and fishing gear at duckcamp.com. Love their mallard hat and their pointer hat that's in that clay colorway, Coach, that is the burnt orange. Here's the great seasons, y'all, hunting and football. Again, duckcamp.com. Thank y'all so much for being a part of it. Hey, guys, I got to ask y'all, before we let folks go, the game is on Monday night, right? Brandon Huey says, something tells me Notre Dame might surprise some folks. What do y'all make of that? Y'all all in on Ohio State? By the way, I picked Notre Dame twice now. Once over Georgia and once over Penn State. Where are y'all at on Notre Dame, Ohio State?
Coach, you want it?
I would rather see Notre Dame win. I like their coach. I think he's class. It's been a long time for them, and we share that, something similar. Not just failing year after year to break through and be a consistent blue blood team. I'd like to see Notre Dame win the game. I'm not saying they are. I don't know. I'm to the point where who knows? I mean, crazy things happen. I'd have never thought Oregon would have got spanked like they got spanked.
Yeah,
but
that's a good point.
But would y'all say that Notre Dame is a little more finesse than Ohio State or not?
No, I think they're less finesse.
Well, then I'll say Notre Dame, because just that finesse stuff, see what it did for Oregon.
Yeah, I think Ohio State smacks them. I think they smack them. There's too much speed on the outside. I mean, Leonard Moore's been tremendous. I don't think anybody in the country would have expected him to be as elite of a cornerback as he is. Watts in the back end, very good as well. But unless you deploy what Texas did with the Thorpe winner and another All-American, I don't know. I like Ohio State to win that game. I'm also kind of I have an outlier opinion on teams that win championships. And to put it in layman's term for the NFL, look, if my team's not going to win it, I'd rather just that one team that's experienced it several times in a row win it again. So no other fan base can experience that happiness. Maybe that's just me. But look, if the Cowboys aren't winning the Super Bowl in 2024, 2025, 2026, keep giving it to the Chiefs, because I don't want anybody else to experience that level of happiness at some point, just like the Red Sox, just like the Warriors. Those fans will just kind of fizzle out and become entitled. And, Alabama, a little bit like that over the last decade too. So just give it back to Ohio State.
I would not want to be CJ's neighbor, Coach.
Yeah.
CJ, can I borrow some eggs? No, I only want to give the eggs to the people that have already eaten.
Yeah. And I'm going to be happy eating my own eggs.
Yeah.
Spend for yourself, fat boy.
That's right. Now in Apocalypse, I hope y'all take me in, all right?
I love it. All right. I have not decided which way I'm going yet. I'm leaning a little bit towards Notre Dame because of the run game. I think Notre Dame is a very similar team to Michigan, both on defense and on offense, except they have a more productive offense, in my opinion, a more functional offense. But I will add this. Marcus Freeman may be a defensive coach. I think what Pete Kwiatkowski pulled off, it was pretty rare to make Ohio State look almost pedestrian at times on offense. I don't know if Marcus Freeman is willing to go to those lengths like Pete Kwiatkowski did to switch up his defense.
Maybe not.
And if that's the case, then I think that Ohio State will beat them badly.
Bobby, do you think Ohio State did enough in the run game against Texas to carry that over against the Notre Dame front?
No.
Notre
Dame has a more run-oriented defensive front than Texas.
Yeah,
like a run-stopping defensive front. And I will say this: they've got it's good. Chip Kelly and Ryan Day didn't know what to do when Texas basically took Jeremiah Smith out of the game. That's how I felt. Like they were like, "Holy are they really doing this?" And they couldn't go to plan B quick enough before they stubbed their own toe, right? I don't think Marcus Freeman will do that. I think he'll try to play them straight up. And if their corners can handle it, then okay. But I don't know. Look, Penn State, Texas, and Michigan all kept Ohio State, and Nebraska all kept Ohio State in the 20s, right? Can Notre Dame eke out 24 points somehow with a running quarterback, really athletic running quarterback? I don't think the 9.5 points is right. I would say that. Isn't it 9.5 that they're favored by, CJ?
Yeah, 9.
Yeah, I would definitely take the under on that. But anyways, all right, that's going to do it for today's winning drive. I stepped in. Oh, wait a minute, Clint Burrows, Jarrett Gibson could be amazing. He reminds me of Joe Bergeron. There's an old name from the past with similar play styles, but also the constant fumbling. If it gets cleaned up, we're good. Gibson could certainly be a piece of the puzzle if Texas attempts to use him in that direction. I'm not so sure that Cedric Baxter, though, isn't the guy as long as he comes back healthy. Just got to say that. As good as Gibson might be, I think Baxter a little bit had a chance to be special. We'll see if he comes back. Anyways, this is going to be it for the winning drive. Jerry and CJ are going to have a portal-specific and NFL-specific update later this evening. So please join us back here at On Texas Football for that, either on YouTube or the podcast. For Bob Shipley and CJ Vogel, as well as our producer, Matt Hutchison, thanks for watching On Texas Football. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em.